Hi, everyone.
Hi everyone. So thank you for joining us today for our Coffee with Curators chat. If you don't know, my name is Teresa, and I am one of OwlCrate's curators for our adult boxes and our YA boxes. So today we will be doing a couple of different things. We'll be talking about curses and magic, and we'll be answering some fan questions. I also do our Owl Babbles, which are our chats with our monthly authors. So stay tuned for our chat with our July author. We still need to finalize a couple of dates, but we will get that figured out and post all of that on social media.
Hi, everyone. My name is Yatasmin. I'm one of the other curators on the OwlCrate YA team. I do a lot of things now beyond YA, but I'm excited to join this live today. Some little news. Of course, we're on the Nest. Our live stream will be available after if you are not able to watch right now. We do live stream on Instagram as well. All those live streams are also available to rewatch later. And yeah, I would just keep up with our social media, especially our TikTok and Instagram, because we do post a lot there, as well as our newsletter. And today, we are going to be giving away 3 July boxes. So stay tuned to see if you are going to be a lucky winner. This is a really cool box. I really love this box, so it's worth getting.
All of the
Yeah.
unboxing is super cool, so keep on tagging
Yeah,
too.
yeah, we love seeing them. Um, but yeah, we are going to be talking about curses and magic, which is our theme talk for today to kind of prerequisite our unboxing at the end of the month for July. So we got a couple of questions related to curses and magic, as well as like other questions. And of course, feel free to leave live questions as well. We'll get to as many as we possibly can. But right now, we're going to get to some of the pre asked questions about curses and magic and other such things.
Yep, yep.
So, one of the questions, we got several questions like this about what's the darkest curse you've ever come across in a book, or like what we think is the worst kind of curse and like the way to break it and stuff like that. That one was an interesting question. And I put that I probably would find like any death related curse, like, dark or like the worst kind. Those are usually hard to break and they're usually irreversible. So that was the answer that I'm going with.
I think for me, population related curses like that specifically affect like a whole wide like variety of people are just they're kind of scary just because it's so widespread. I'm thinking about how there's that black sun curse from The Witcher, if you're a fan of the books, where there's this prophecy that well it's a curse that like there's this bunch of like girls who will bring on the apocalypse. So there's people who start hunting the girls because of that, and then it becomes like a self-fulfilling prophecy because all of the girls who have these magic powers, they get angry because um people are hunting them and they start doing bad things, and so it
Mm.
becomes like a never-ending cycle. And those types of curses are always like really really trippy because there's no feasible way out without massive sacrifice. Brings a lot of angst to the story, which is fun. Next question we have: what is the most unique system of magic you've ever read?
Um, I put our July book. Um, that one had a really cool take on card magic, which was really interesting to read. And one of the big standouts that I remember us talking about when we chose our July book was that the magic system in that book was really, really like unique and interesting. So that's like the first that comes off the top of my head for me.
June's book also had a really cool magic. It was
Yeah.
very different than a lot of what we've seen before in sequels, so also pretty. There's also a book that I just finished for one of our year's projects that has a really cool magic system, and I'm really excited about that one too. So
Ooh. I want to know what that one is about.
we're reading far ahead.
Yeah, we're already starting on 2024 right now.
Hmm.
If you could set a curse on someone, what would it be? So I put something related to truth telling or obedience, which I also realize is something that comes up, especially the obedience part in the July book. That is like a major plot point in that book. Is that there's like curses related to obedience amongst like other things, but That's probably what I would do. That like sounds very, very manipulative, but you know, if you're gonna set a curse, just go all out. You know what I mean?
for sure. When I was looking at this question, I read it as if you could set a curse on someone, who would it be? And I'm like, hold up, I'm not but I think I'd go like the classical witch route and start like turning people I dislike into toads or frogs. But like only temporarily because I am benevolent at the end of the day. But just watching
Oh,
somebody
so,
panic,
so benevolent.
right? But it would be fun just for like a little while.
Lorraine60 says Inkblood Sister Scribe is a really good book. Not too many curses, but still really good. I've been seeing that book a lot recently because
Mhm.
I've seen like a lot of special editions and such for that book and just a lot of hype in general. I think it's like a standalone from what I remember seeing. But yeah, I've heard a lot about that book, especially.
It's at the
I didn't
top.
know it had curses.
It
Well,
sounds
not
like
so many curses, but yeah.
I feel like the hype around it is like it's like getting there for sure. I have like two copies of the book, but I haven't touched it yet. So like that's my probably my
Mm. Morgan also says, I'm looking forward to a book called The Honey Witch that comes out next summer. It has honey bee magic, I'm pretty sure.
that is
That's
cool.
interesting.
Mm.
I haven't seen like honey bee magic much, but that's
There's
really interesting.
there's that one saint from the Greek what's her, the one that
Right, right,
or
you're right.
yeah, that one that like that's probably one of the darkest stories I read within that universe. So like
Um,
when I think about honeybee magic, it goes like that direction.
mhm.
Hopefully this one's a little bit cozier, but hey, it's cool.
It sounds kind of cozy, The Honey
Yeah,
Witch. Like
kind of
that
fit.
that title alone gives me cozy vibes, but we'll see. I actually want to keep that. I actually want to write that down because that one sounds interesting. The Honey Witch.
If y'all don't know, Tasman has been going on like a cozy fantasy like
Oh, so fun. I love it. I'm like partial to that. I'm a cozy fantasy type of person, I've realized, especially because like I've gotten back into reading just a lot more recently than some people. Like I used to read a lot more as a kid and then I had like a huge break. So like now going back into it, I'm kind of finding like what kind of styles of books that I like. And it's like I either like really really high fantasy or I just like cozy fantasy. Like it's just like so many different ends that I like. Fairy Tamer says I'd curse them with something like really annoying, like their current read's ending will always be spoiled. That's horrific.
that's cruel. I feel like getting turned into a
But at the
toad.
same time, go off. Like
I had a math teacher in high school who every time we'd get rowdy, he'd write something about the ending of Game of Thrones on the board because people were watching Game of Thrones but not reading the books, and he finished the book. And I swear he was like the most hated teacher.
oh my god.
Yeah, something like that.
Um we've got multiple viewers asking us if we can give them some cozy fantasy recs.
Ooh.
Sure. Off the top of my head, this is one that I read this year, but I think it's a pretty popular one. Is shoot, it has a long title, and now I'm forgetting it. You know what I'm talking about? It's the Irregular Witches book.
Mm-hmm.
The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches. That was one of the more recent cozy fantasy books that I've read that I really really liked, and I really want to read her next cozy fantasy book because there's one coming up in 2024, and I'm really excited about that one too.
Not a
I've also
particularly big cozy fantasy reader, but I've read Legends and Lattes, which is really
yeah,
really highly recommend it.
uh-huh.
Second soon, I think. So yeah.
Yeah, I think those are like pretty popular Brex. Again, I'm kind of just getting into cozy fantasy, so I do definitely want Rex from the audience as well because I want to read more for sure. Um, One question we got was favorite curse you've ever seen in a story. So I put generational curses as something that I find interesting because I feel like there's so many ways that you can explore generational curses and it can like lead to so many different themes popping up in terms of like how things pass down from generation and like familial relationships and stuff like that. That like I don't know, I find that really interesting because you can take it towards so many different directions. I think like the one that comes up in my mind when I say generational curses is Legendborn, because I
Oh, yeah.
think that one was like a really, really deep and dark one, but I personally think it was just done really, really well.
I really like curses that are done with good intentions but have like really drastic effects. For example, Hecuba, like Greek mythology classics, etc. She tries to run away from Odysseus, who she's like given to as like a slave. So the gods turn her into a dog, but she ends up hating it in some versions of the story. I find that really interesting because like in Greek mythology specifically, you have a lot of curses that are in that
Mhm.
direction. Like people get turned into something because they want to be something else, but then they end up hating it. And I just think that there's just like this cause and effect, like the repercussions that are explored that are really cool and lend a lot to the story.
Yeah.
I think like that's something that's not as done often in like modern books, which is pretty interesting to think about because most of the modern books tend to have like more straightforward curses. So yeah, I would say
Mhm.
those we're going
Greek
the oh cool.
mythology or like mythology in general, I would say is definitely like a popular place to find those types of curses, I feel.
Mm-hmm.
Because it happens like left and right.
Yeah. Next question. What colors do you associate when you read slash think of
I kind of went on like a whole rant here. So for me, it depends on like the type of magic, I guess. So like light cozy settings give me like green or brown, just like earthy colors, I guess. And darker magic, maybe like deeper colors like navy or maroon or black. So very convoluted answer there, but there's that answer.
makes sense though, especially if you're like someone who plays like Dungeons and Dragons. You color code everything, right?
Yeah.
I went the easy way out and just said red. I think it's because I've been reading a lot of stuff about like blood magic recently. So, um, yeah, I've been playing a lot of Dragon Age too, which has like blood magic as the focus of a lot of the curse-based stuff, fighting stuff. So I think red is what comes to mind. But your answer is better than mine for sure. Mine is
It was very convoluted, but yeah, I feel like I can't just associate one color myself because there's so many different types of like magic that goes on that gives me different vibes depending on like the book or whatever. So that was like the answer I came up. Um, what this is like my own personal question. What um magical stories are you partial to that you have maybe like grown up with?
ooh. I think again a lot of classics. I think it's because like back when I grew up in China, I read a lot of classics in Chinese. And so those are like my bedtime stories, which in hindsight explains a lot about how like my reading taste developed because those stories are dark. Also fairy tales too. I just think like fairy tales, a lot of them have really interesting magic systems, especially some of the older ones that aren't as popular anymore. But in
Mm-hmm.
I think like actually growing up with novels, I say Ursula Le Guin's Tales of Earthsea, which is like over here. That has
Mm-hmm.
like a magical school system where there's like training for sorcerers and witches, but the not witches like sorcerers and wizards, and it's a very interesting kind of plot because it plays with good and evil and like in between, and it's considered like a children's book but it uses the magic system to explain that kind of good and evil thing. So I found that really formulative, like in terms of how the magic system was created, but at the same time how like unique it was. So that was probably like my biggest influence and probably the series that I love the most in terms of like. How about you?
It's kind of hard to say like book wise if I grew up with magic, like magic related books, because I read a lot of dystopian at the time. But like in general with media or anything, like I guess like the closest I could say is like I grew up with Disney, which is like huge on magic and like fantasy. And like I was also the type who was fascinated by the fact that like Disney kind of made these fantasy stories into having like happily ever after type of endings, or like just more lighthearted. Like obviously there would be dark themes, but like compared to like what they were inspired by, because a lot of the stories that Disney movies are, or like especially like classical Disney movies,
Mhm.
earlier, um like Golden Age or Silver Age, or those
Yeah,
kind of movies from like uh 19, I guess 1930s onward, are inspired by like fairy tales that just have much darker themes to it and like darker endings. So like one of the most popular ones that come up in my head is The Little Mermaid,
yeah.
because the original is much more depressing than what Disney has brought out. So like I was always interested in that when I was growing up, like how it was changed to fit like Disney and that kind of world. But like what is like the actual fairy tale, and what like dark elements did they like leave out? Which is like kind of strange for like a little kid to be very interested in, but like I did like that like contrast, I guess.
Mhm. I mean, to a degree, fairy tales were meant to like, they were supposed to be, stories about morality taught to kids, and then Disney was like, "We're gonna take the morality bit out and take the lesson part
Yeah,
and turn it into happy endings." So, it is, like, pretty interesting to watch the types of,
yeah. I think it
like
was like a mix of that and like really early on, a lot of them were used to like as like bedtime stories to like warn children
mm,
so that they would be kept safe and don't do anything that might put them in harm's way, which is also pretty interesting.
didactic stories are always really good because you wanna try and, show kids, like, the worst case scenario for everything, which is, mildly traumatizing. I really like how, Studio Ghibli movies, they have that, like, subtle, cozy kind of magic
Mhm.
for, like, almost all of the movies, um, for, like, a couple of maybe the darker just but the rest of them, they have, like, this soft, cozy fantasy vibe, but they
Yeah.
also have a lesson. So I find that maybe as a kid, you should start with Studio Ghibli first before you go
Yeah.
yeah.
I feel like watching Studio Ghibli as a kid is like really great. That's like aside from Disney, I also did watch a good amount of Studio Ghibli as a kid, and that was really awesome. And like aside from the cozy vibes, yeah, they do have like lessons. Like
Yeah.
some of the popular ones, like especially like again, the popular one that comes to mind is Spirited Away. That one has like lessons of like environmentalism and like taking care of your environment and such, which granted I didn't realize those lessons as a kid, to be real, because I was more focused on just like the craziness that was happening in the bathhouse.
Yeah.
But like I think like looking back on it, I'm like that's like such a really cool way that they incorporated that into the story.
Yeah, Miyazaki's making has always been super political, but he does it in such a subtle, magical way that, like, kids can still understand the lessons if they
Mhm.
enough, and I really appreciate that. Just to be clear, this isn't like a either or, you should watch Studio Ghibli instead of
Yeah, watch it all if you
but,
want. Like,
you
there's
know,
no either or.
bad
I think like the one that I did get from Spirited Away specifically, like I didn't get the environmentalism part until later, but the one that I did get was the greed aspect because of the
yeah.
parents. That was the one that like definitely clicked when I was younger, and I was just like, oh, that's insane. But
Mhm.
yeah, like I think Studio Ghibli is also a really cool place to start when it comes to like curses and magic
Yeah.
in media. So like Spirited Away, House Moving Castle. I also think of The Cat Returns, which is like a really fun one that I enjoy. That I like. I see people talking about it, but like not as much as some of the other ones. But I personally think it's such a good one because I think it's like a unique take on the type of like curse that's set on the main character and like how she has to escape it. And it's just funny. It's just a funny movie.
Mhm. It's always with Studio Ghibli, like, the curses do happen to, like, most of the characters, like, uh, based on all the fantasy films he's done, but they always find a way to break the curse in a way that's original, and like in a way that teaches a lesson too. Like in Cowl's Moving Castle, like he changed Miyazaki changed up the plot a little bit, but it works really well with the whole curse breaking. And
Hmm.
I'm really glad because like when I grew up, they weren't as popular here in the States, but now they're becoming increasingly popular. I think because partially because they've been dubbed now, and partially because just subtitles have become like such a widespread type of thing. So it's really nice watching like people discover these films for the first.
For sure. We can get into some other questions that we got, but again, people feel free to ask live questions about anything, whether it be the topic at hand or just anything else that you might have questions about OwlCrate related or bookish related. But we did get questions about favorite editions so far and which future ones that we're excited about. So I said that I really loved our Divine Rivals edition. I feel like we had a really unique edition going on for Divine Rivals, and it's exciting because the second book is coming out, so that leaves like you know creative space for that. Um, and I think a lot of people have been asking us about Divine Rivals sequel, so keep your eyes out. I also really love Threads That Bind as a recent addition because that was something that we did, like something pretty new. And again, it was like one of my first books that I got to work on, so that was fun. Future editions, I'm excited about Shadow and Bone, of course. That is like one of our most decked out special editions coming out. And I'm also excited about August's adult book because that one just looks really, really pretty, and I really want to see that like physically because I've seen pictures of that book and it looks so pretty.
You stole my answer. I was gonna say just because the vintage vibe is so cool. I think it matches really well with, and it's kind of like a direction we've really not like never gone into before. So I think it's really, and I love Shadow and Bone because we've done like a cover reveal, and I think that the books look fantastic. But I need those books in my hand, and I cannot wait to get them. So, yeah. In terms of past books, I have to say, what was it? Violet Made of Thorns, that
Mhm.
our July book from last year. I was looking at it just the other day. I love the it's like a very it's still high fantasy, but it feels like a very like different type of high. So that's probably one of the books that I love the most.
Um, we got questions about Violet Made of Thorns as well.
Yeah. So somebody asked, do you have anything related to Violet? I'm assuming this is about the sequel. We actually don't know the release date yet for the sequel, but we're definitely looking into it because that's a lot. So if there's the potential to do a sequel,
Yeah, it's kind of hard to give any news when we don't know anything ourselves.
yeah,
As soon as we are able to say anything, we most likely will. But
we don't actually get like compared to, like the world, so you know, it's always a bit of a waiting game, especially when it comes to like sequels and stuff like that.
yeah, definitely. We're just as like excited waiting for all of this and want to know the news too, but we're kind of just as much in the dark right now. Got a question of would OC do a special edition of the Little Shop of Found Things? It's magical. Not at the moment, but I did look that up and read the premise, and it does sound pretty interesting. I never heard of that book before, but that's an interesting recommendation that we got.
We have plans for things with Celtic mythology. It's a great book cover. We did the Jarwood last year, which is Celtic based on mythology, Welsh mythology, etc. Um, for I don't hopefully get to. I'm like a really like a very big fan, so if it is something that we are able to fit in.
Yeah, 100%. We also got questions of if any spooky or autumnal items coming up in a box soon, and our YA August box actually has a really cute autumnal item that I think people will like. and I would put it on like the useful side as well. It's a pretty
Great.
useful item, and I think it like really works with like the cozy atmosphere that autumn can bring. So I think people will like it in that sense.
It's something that's perfect for
Yeah, 100%.
yeah.
Of Pages and Ink said, shout out to you both for the July box. Such an amazing job. We're loving the love that this box has been getting. It's really cool to be seeing like people unboxing and tagging us on uh, the pictures that they post of their box and stuff and like everything that they got in the box. It's really cool to see.
Thank you for all the love. It's been really, really like we posted pictures in our Slack chat. We're really Brookie 03501. Will the August adult box have anything special added to it? Yes. So this book we have fully designed covers, new end papers, reversible, all those fancy things. Do you want to know like the specifics for like art? But I will say that we got a bunch of really cool artwork for this book specifically, and our hardcover case is something that we've never really done before too. So, yeah.
Yeah, check out our social media posts for each box because usually we put the specs out there, but this one is definitely a cool box. Yeah, you don't want to miss out on this one.
Mhm.
And I think like with our adult books, they're gonna just get cooler and cooler because especially now that we've just started off on the adult box, we're also kind of in that phase of seeing what else we can do for our books.
Mhm. Josie asks, "Is the new Cassandra Clare adult book going to be available through OwlCrate?" Hmm. I can't say anything. Again, it's a side eye emoji. Um, Wait and see. But I will say that we have our eye on literally all of the bigger releases that are coming up soon. We've talked about doing a lot of them. So if there's something that you want to see, make sure you let and we will push it up on our radar. Because we just finished our big brainstorming session and we have big plans for everything. So yeah, a lot of these things are in the works. So keep that in mind.
Um, AK Herman asks, does OwlCrate ever think about partnering with an author or state of an older fantasy book series to reissue special edition? We look into that sometimes in terms of what older editions we could do. Um, but yeah, that's part of something that we also did in our brainstorming is like what uh, backlist books we could do. I don't know if we have many like older fantasies in our lists right now, but that could be a really interesting idea to like create special editions for some older fantasies that exist. But there's definitely some backlist books that we have in mind that we want to visit as having special editions for OwlCrate as well.
Hmm. There's the two series that you and I have thrown around, and I think that counts for this category for sure.
I
So
think
we
so.
definitely do that.
So yeah, we've definitely thought about several that we want to do and several that we really are passionate about.
Mhm. M Harris 3791 says, "I'd love to see another book sleeve. I didn't know about Alvin, but I'm obsessed with the design of the Raven Boys book sleeve or a seasonal themed one. It's definitely something also on our radar too. We know that people love book sleeve. I think the last one we did was this year. I want to say March. So that was
Maybe,
not
yeah. That was a
too
while
long.
ago.
Yeah. Maybe like around half a year ago. But we will definitely try and include book sleeves at least, once a year because they are such useful items. And as a
Mhm.
bookworm, you never really have too many book sleeves. So yeah.
I will say we have one that's like kind of a different kind of book sleeve that might be coming out. That's
Hmm.
all I'm going to say on that, but it's not your usual book sleeve that you might see.
It's a
And
very special project.
yeah,
Yeah.
so definitely we have like cool things coming out when it comes to book sleeve as well. And that's something that like we like revisiting anyways, because I feel like people really love collecting those as well.
For sure.
Erica Ferrance asks, what's the process for deciding on a color scheme for a box? So sometimes it kind of just comes together as we're working on like design and like the creative aspect of the box. We don't always have like a color scheme that we outright decide all the time for a box, but when we see it kind of going towards a certain direction, then that's when we like decide like, okay, let's stick with this kind of color scheme that we have going on. Um, so like there are some boxes that we have like very blue going, a lot of blue going on, which was our June box. Our July box has a lot of purple going on.
Hmm.
Yeah, so it kind of just it starts coming together as we kind of start coming up with concepts and like design ideas and figure out what works with not just like the items but like also how it works with the book itself.
I'd say like we kind of start with the book just because with books normally there is kind of like a color scheme that goes on within the book itself anyways, and then we try and build it from there. And with the items it's a little bit more versatile because based on the items and the fandoms we choose we can kind of tailor it to match each other. So it, like Yutasan said, it comes together in that pretty naturally and cohesively.
Mhm.
I think that might be it for today then.
Yeah, I think we
Mhm.
are good. Again, if you have like any other questions that you might want to ask, usually we have our social media team at hand to answer any questions as well as our customer support. But in the meantime, you can sign up to our newsletter. You can rewatch our events and our live streams, and definitely sign up to subscribe and purchase. And remember to watch our social media for more OwlCrate news.
Yeah. And our giveaway winners for today will be contacted by our awesome social media team. So please keep an eye out on our Insta stories for this. And thank you everyone for joining. We will see you guys shortly with an unboxing, some other fun
Yeah.
things.
Yeah. Bye, everyone.